Let me tell you what I'm about to do. I'm going to terrify you. I'm going to make you believe that Brock Purdy and Tua Tagovailoa are the same player. Then, when you're convinced that they are the same player, I'm going to show you that they aren't. Some of you are going to get mad. Don't get mad. You'll miss the most important part if you're mad. I know you hate the idea right now that they could be the same. But why? Why do you hate that idea? Somebody who loves Purdy as much as I do wouldn't have the courage to do what I'm about to do, but I trust that you are going to stick it out. So, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves. Here we go. Brock Purdy and Tua Tagovailoa, all grades from PFF. Right now, Tua's ranked number 1. Brock's ranked number 11. All right, that's one of the rare differences I'm about to show you. Completion percentage. Brock leads the league. Tua's number 2 by 0.2 of a point. Yards. Brock's number 2. Tua's number 4. Touchdowns. Brock's number 2. He's got 25 touchdowns. Second in the league in touchdowns. Tua, 4th in the league in touchdowns. He's got 24. Interceptions. Brock is better in this category. He has 7. Tua has 10. Big time throw percentage. Tua, 2nd in the league. Brock, 5th in the league. 6.5 to 6%. Average depth of target. Brock is 8th in the NFL, 8.5 yards. Tua, 15th, 8.2 yards. Well, that's really close. Average time to throw a pass. Tua leads the NFL, 2.3 seconds. Brock, 9th in the league, 2.66 seconds. Tua gets it out faster. There's more. PFF grade on deep passes. Let's talk about the deep ball. Brock, number 1 graded quarterback on the deep ball. Tua, number 2 graded quarterback on the deep ball. Well, do they throw the ball deep the same amount? Yes. By percentage, Brock is 15th in the league. 11.4% of his passes are deep balls. These are 20 yards or more. Tua, just behind him, 11.3%. Almost identical numbers. What about their completion percentage on deep balls? Brock's better here. Much. But relative to the league, it's close. Brock is number 1 in the NFL, 65.9%, blowing the league away. Tua, number 3 in the NFL, 53%. So 12%, 13% better for Brock. Ranking-wise, very similar. How about touchdowns on deep balls? Identical. They're tied for the league lead, 9 apiece. How about interceptions on deep balls? Brock is much better in this category, just 1. Tua has 5. Turnover-worthy plays on deep balls. Brock is 8th, only 4%. Tua 23rd, 10.6. So Brock protects it better on deep balls. Time to throw deep. Tua gets it out faster on deep balls, 2.8. Brock, 3.3. Is that all? I wish. Intermediate throws. Tua, number 2. Brock, number 3 in yardage. Very close. About 30 yards apart. Intermediate completion percentage. Brock, number 3. Tua, number 5. Very close. Yards per attempt on intermediate throws. These are 10 to 19-yard throws. This includes Yak. Very close. Brock is number 1, 12.8. Tua is number 6. Average depth of target intermediate throws. Almost identical. This is not Yak. This is how far the target is when you throw it to him. 14 yards for Brock. 13.9 for Tua. Almost the same. Time to throw on intermediate throws. Boy, Tua gets it out fast, 2.5 seconds. Brock is 9th. Tua leads the league. Turnover-worthy plays intermediate. This is a reverse of the deep balls. Tua protects the ball more intermediate. Brock puts it at risk more intermediate, 2.8 to 8.5. Big difference there. All right, what about the percentage of short throws? Neither one of these guys throws it short. People think they do. Tua, fewest percentage of his throws are less than 9 yards. Brock, 8th fewest in the league. So both are, I think, better than people think there. And this, I love this one. Percentage of throws behind the line of scrimmage. Tua is 2nd, 22%. Second most throws behind the line of scrimmage. Brock, second to last. Second to last. Fewest throws behind the line of scrimmage, 14%. What haven't we done here? George Patton, the great general. The original. We always, on this show, give credit to Lorenzo Neal for saying this, but George Patton might have said it first. Pressure makes diamonds. After all that stuff that makes him look the same, something makes him look very different this year. How often is Tua pressured? Least among NFL starters, in fact. 23.9% of his dropbacks he's pressured on. Least among starters, like guys who, play a lot. Brock, 8th most pressured starter in the league, 39%. Brock is pressured, 15% more than Tua is. But look at the completion percentages. Brock, against pressure, is 54%, which is 5th in the NFL. He's got 8 touchdowns and 4 picks against pressure. Tua, 26th out of 27 quarterbacks this year qualified in this category. 41% completion percentage against pressure. Just ahead of Bryce Young. 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Now, this is not Tua's norm. It's gotten worse. Last year, it was just over 50%. The year before, it was just over 50%. But Brock has done this in year 2, 54% on 39% pressure rate. Again, 8th most pressured starter in the league. First impressions are often wrong since they are based on past experiences, your current mood, surroundings, or appearances. I think the reason that Brock Purdy gets judged the way he judged is not because he was drafted 262. I actually don't think, I was thinking about this last night watching Tua. I don't think Brock would get a bunch more credit if he'd been drafted 5th. Tua is the example. Look at these guys. Statistically, they are very similar. And Tua's been doing it since he came into the league. The difference was he made a more negative first impression. Statistically, though, it's there. But he made a more negative first impression than Brock did. But think about Tua, right? What hurt Tua? Tua was drafted ahead of Justin Herbert. The guy who physically looks like everything you would want with the 5th overall pick. Or the 1st overall pick. It's crazy in hindsight he didn't get drafted higher. I'm not convinced that Brock would be viewed differently if he was drafted 5th because Tua was drafted 5th. And Tua doesn't get any credit. Everyone's looking for reasons to tear Tua down. I don't want to say myself included, but I watched that game. I looked at the numbers and went, oh my God, there's got to be something different between these two because you hope that Brock is better than Tua. And he is. I think those pressure stats say a lot. I think the deep ball accuracy stat says a lot. I think the time to throw deep ball accuracy, the time to throw on deep balls says a lot. Brock's turnover-worthy plays on those deep balls were very low relative to Tua's, but I think the pressure thing says the most. What Brock has been able to do under pressure is mind-blowing. We talked to Kyle Juszczyk on this show in the offseason, and one of the questions was, Kyle, Juice, buddy, once this sophomore season gets going and all the defensive coordinators, the great defensive coordinators in the league, Dom Capers, Dick LeBeau, all the guys you can think of. Dick's no longer coaching in the league, but I just love saying his name. When they get an off season to prepare for Brock, when they're in the house in Boca while everyone else is on the beach, what are they going to come up with? And what did Juice say? Some of you may remember. He said they already did it. They already pressured it. They already pressured him. He handled it fine. That was one of the smartest things anybody said in the offseason because the season has played itself out. It's proven to be true. He handles it fine. First impressions come from appearances. Lasting impressions come from action. This was said by me just now. It's a historic quote. It'll go down in history. And remember, you were here when it was said. First impressions come from appearances. Lasting impressions come from actions. The first impression of Brock, of course, that he was the 262nd pick. But really the first impression about Brock is he was last on the depth chart. He didn't get a lot of passes in camp. He got on the field. He was small. His arm doesn't look like Herbert's. He doesn't run through guys like Lamar. Tua is the same. But lasting impressions come from actions. And right now, Brock's actions are creating a guy that's going to make incredible lasting impressions. If he can keep it up at the rate that he's going, then one day there won't be any debate. But there's no question right now to me that it's more about the way he looks than where he was drafted. Where he was drafted matters too, of course. All right. There we go. You made it to the end. I hope through all of that, maybe it sparked some different thought in you. I'm sure I missed something. But I just started looking at the numbers. And it was one of these things this morning where I looked at one thing and then I looked at the second thing And then I looked at the third thing, and then I looked at the fourth thing, and I thought, oh my God, I got to write this down. These are all the same for the most part. For the most part. The last thing I looked at, I didn't go into it with any preconceived notion of what I was going to find because I didn't know that everything was almost identical. And then the last thing I looked at was the pressure. It just happened to be. If I looked at that first, if I looked at the pressure stats first, I probably never would have looked at everything else. But I just looked at the pressure stats last. I just went through the progression and went, oh, it looks different when I watch them. The throw that Tua made to the front of the right pylon in front of the end zone to Tyreek Hill yesterday was ridiculous. That was part of it. I was watching the game going, oh, I don't think this guy gets enough respect, but I also don't think he's as good. So what is it? What's going on here? Remember this. It came from Guy. Me. Guy. Yeah. You know who calls me Guy? Nick Aliotti, the legendary Oregon defensive coordinator. I've known Nick for a few years because I've done TV work with him, and he's the one person that calls me Guy. But as I've said, maybe it was him that put that in my head, that if I were to change my name to a stage, if I could have thought of this 20 years ago, a stage name, that's what I would have gone with. Scotty B, $5. Thanks, Scotty. Let me take a sip. I've been battling a throat issue for several months. What separates Brock Purdy from Foles or Wentz? Can he maintain this level of play? Well, from what separates him from Wentz, his teammates love him. That's for one. I mean, Carson was putting together their MVP season. It's pretty crazy. It's one of the not forgotten seasons, but part of what made the full Super Bowl so wild was that he replaced a guy who was playing better than he'd ever played and better than he would ever play again in Carson Wentz that year. So, yeah, consistency. Absolutely. I mean, there are things with guys where you go back and you can pull somebody's best season. What was their best season here? What was their best season? Go look at baseball. It's funny when you look at baseball. You can always pick like, oh, this guy had 38 home runs that year and then 27 or less. The rest, what happened? So it goes back to this famous quote. Lasting impressions come from action. Action that lasts, not one-time action, right? Action that lasts. And I think that's what will separate Brock. I mean, from a organizational standpoint, he's got the stability. Foles was all over the map, remember, before he won the Super Bowl. He'd been at a ton of bad situations. He hadn't been great. He was on the verge. Remember the story? He was on the verge of retirement once upon a time. I think a lot. But if we're talking just like fundamentally as a prospect, as a guy in the locker room, Brock's more athletic than Foles, much more athletic than Foles. And he's a much faster processor than Wentz, and a leader, like his teammates like him. So there's that. Somebody asked this. Cosmo says, "How is Brock Purdy 11th? Who's second and third?" He's talking about PFF grades. Good question. I don't know. I mean, I can tell you who. I don't know why. I didn't have time this morning to really dive in, and honestly, I'm not sure I would totally understand some of the grading. I don't use a lot of the grading. I love the raw stats, but I wonder if some of it is that PFF has Brock Purdy at 3.5% of his throws are turnover worthy, which, the guys ranked ahead of him don't have it that high. So maybe that could be it. It's Dak, Tua, Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, Mahomes, Herbert, Hurts, Goff, Stafford, Lawrence, Purdy. Take it all with a grain of salt. Not in a million years would I take Goff over Purdy, especially if I was playing the Niners. Pablito, Tua seems like a nice dude, but he seems like a goofball. Every game of theirs I watch, he's slipping or there's a snap or something. Yeah, there was. Why does so much weird shit happen in these Dolphins games? The double fumble on the goal line yesterday from Tua on the snap was a weird one. I know that's the eye test to me, that none of these stats reflect the eye test that I saw, which is that it does seem like the Dolphins, for as you watch me, like, okay, I'm kind of watching the Niners here. Really weird stuff happens to them on offense, like really weird stuff all the time. And a lot of it feels like it's Tua running for his life, trying to make a play, getting swallowed up. I thought that I would look. Here's something I thought I would find and didn't find. I thought I would look and see that Tua's like sack percentage is way higher than Brock's, but it's not. Like percentage of times that when they're pressured, it turns into a sack. I mean, I can tell you what it is. We've already bogged everybody down with the numbers. 19% of pressures turn into a sack for Tua, and 16% of pressures turn into a sack for Brock. So it is, 3%, like, there is a difference. Brock is better at escaping, especially for Tua, who gets the ball out quickly. I think maybe what it indicates is that when Tua's first read isn't there, because he leads the league in time to throw, his deep ball, the deep ball comes out really fast too, unlike Brock's. Brock's might be a function, maybe there's a little more of the play action deep ball with the deep drop. But I also think part of it is Brock. My guess, if we had a way to, I'm sure somebody can measure this, if we looked, Brock would have hit more deep balls in which he extended the play than Tua. So I think some of what that seems to indicate to me would be that Brock processes faster once, if the first or second read isn't there, that Brock can still make a play maybe better than Tua. But, that's something that like Mike McDaniel would have a great opinion of that. Although Mike, actually, maybe not. I mean, Mike didn't get to spend any time with Brock last year, but you'd have to get them together and figure, that's just my hypothesis, my guess based on that. I love that quote. When the Niners win number 6, I'll reference this quote. Yeah, or you can reference just me saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. First game against the Dolphins had my first impression is, wow, his processing is elite with all those blitzes. I think that's a Brock comment. Tua has limited mobility and is very Jimmy-like when the first read is in there. CJ, I think there's something to that. Tua, clearly a system QB who can't do shit without Tyreek. You have to at least recognize that the numbers with Tua and Brock are the same, are very similar in a lot of ways, and people are so dismissive and abusive of Tua, and then defend Brock to the hilt, the hilt, the kilt. Like, at least let's look, pro Brock. I don't think him and Tua are the same. I think he's better than Tua. But we've got to at least recognize that Tua, like last year, led the league in touchdown percentage, led the league in average yards per attempt. Brock this year, same thing. This year, it's like MVP. Last year, it was like, Tua, get out of here. Can we at least acknowledge that? And you can still say Tua's better, but at least acknowledge that when Tua puts up these numbers, everyone ignores him. And he was the 5th pick. So why? I think part of it is the first impression that occurred with him and Herbert looking like a steal and Tua looking like a bust. And I think he hasn't shaken that in the same way that Brock, it'll take a while to shake being picked 262. But I think both of them had negative first impressions for people in terms of, what do we think? It came at different times. The second Herbert looked like he looked, Tua's stock started tanking. Tua doesn't, So let's at least acknowledge that. And that's why I don't think it's as simple as, well, if Brock had been drafted 5th, he'd be getting all the love. Well, would he have been drafted 5th again ahead of Herbert? Would he have been drafted 5th ahead of Mac Jones? Right? Because it'd be different. That's what's wild about the Trey Lance draft is like none of those guys outside of the first guy make any of the rest of them look bad. Like the Jets get killed for Zach Wilson, but no one's like, well, could have had Fields, could have had Lance, could have had Mac Jones. Usually that's how the draft works. It's a guy gets judged in part on who comes after him. And that class just gets judged on all being terrible quarterbacks. Guy, I hear way more people say it's Brock surrounding players. Yeah, 100% people say that. Here's a comment. Turnover-worthy throws, laughy emoji. Is Grant the one grading PFF? That's funny. In fairness, the center went down. I don't think it was the fumble was onto it. Yeah, I don't know that it was. I'm not saying it was or wasn't onto it. I'm just saying there is something about watching their games sometimes. Charlie, would you guys give away Debo and Ayuk for Tyreek? This might sound crazy. I wouldn't do that 2 for 1. No, maybe it doesn't sound crazy. I mean, part of what makes Brock special, makes Kyle special is their ability to spread it out. Now, if you told me you get Tyreek plus somebody who's, who would be the try to think of like a Debo, a poor man's Debo. Because I think Tyreek is a rich man, like a rich man's everybody, but a rich man's Ayuk. I wouldn't do that deal though. Herbert isn't as good. He gets all the excuses because he looks like a QB. I'd take Brock over a bad, and he has a bad coach. He does have a bad coach. Right. Like but I don't think it's just about draft position. I think it's go back to this famous quote here from me 10 minutes ago. When we say that Brock gets judged the way he gets judged only because he's picked 262, we're not giving all of us enough credit for the fact that we see plenty of guys drafted in the top 10 and immediately think they suck too. Like we make very quick snap judgments about Mac Jones, top 15. People are like, no. Fields very quickly. People are like, I don't think so. Now, he's had some flashes, actually playing a little better lately. We'll see. Maybe he's a victim like Herbert of a bad situation, a bad coach, and revolving door at OC and whatever. I mean, they definitely haven't been helped. That's undeniable. But I think the biggest thing when it comes to quarterbacks is the most basic judgment. It's appearance. The same thing you do when you walk into a room and you start evaluating everybody's appearance. I think let's not overcomplicate it. I think it starts with that. Like if Herbert had by some wild manner been drafted 262 and put up Brock's numbers, ask yourself this: would he be judged differently? The answer is the answer is not debatable. Hell yes, he'd be judged differently. Even if he was drafted at 262, why would he be judged differently? Because of the way he looks, his arm strength, his physicality, his speed, like all that stuff. It is the first thing you do. What do you do when you're watching a football player you've never seen before? What do you do? I'll tell you what I do. I Google him. And the first thing I look at Wikipedia is where he went to college, his height and his weight. Like, oh man, 6'6", 230, went to Bemidji State. Did he get in trouble? Did he have bad grades? Right? Immediately, snap judgment. Interesting. 6'6", 230, went to Miami. Oh shit, this guy must be legit. It's that simple. Can we do the Dak comparison next? We did a Dak. I didn't go as in depth on Dak, but John and I did a Dak comparison before, but maybe we can do that. Dak beats up on bad teams. I meant to click on this from Tyron Lannister. Tyrion? Purdy's a better scrambler than Tua, but Tua has a lightning quick release. I think Brock is more of a poor man's Joe Burrow, the way he plays. A poor man's Joe Burrow. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the Burrow comp. No, never. Tyreek's off-field stuff. Well, he would not be a fit, at least for this group, the way they're built. Go back and look. Remember the video I made? Some of you maybe a couple of you do. About 2 weeks ago about Ayuk. Made a video about Ayuk. And I said, there's three reasons you keep Ayuk. Remember what number 3 was? Number 3 was Ayuk has a championship mentality. Doesn't throw tantrums. Doesn't have to get talked to on the sideline. And I played 3 different DK Metcalf clips in that video. Brock isn't a poor man's anything. That commenter is a moron. Commenter's not a moron. It's a comp. Let's not get so defensive. And he is relatively a poor man when you look at his salary. Comment: the only time I've seen Brock rattled was after the hit that put him in the concussion protocol in the Vikings game. Other than that, he's unflappable. Tua needs more confidence, belief to play well. Yeah, I think part of it, Tua, and I like defending Tua a little bit just because he seems like a really good dude, and he's clearly a NFL starter. But I also think I think what's beautiful about Tua's career is that he was in situations that seemed like that could really ruin somebody's career. And luckily the Dolphins got him out of that spot very quickly and got him Mike McDaniel. Poor man making $1 million. I know. Look, man, when I go to bed at night, I hope I say a prayer for Brock. Hope he can survive. Judd, reason Tua gets ripped down is he has stunk in the NFL before, but Purdy's never looked like that over a long period. Yeah, I agree. That's part of it. The first impression was not good. The first impression for Brock was fantastic. Being compared to Joe isn't a bad take. I agree. I mean, you want to debate if he's a poor man's Burrow or not, but I have to think about that. But I don't, you know, I think it's a compliment, even if it doesn't sound like one. Maybe he's better than that ultimately, but just Mike, I'd say Purdy's a really young Drew Brees. Drew was quite mobile as a young player. Toyota and Alaska Airlines making up for what the Niners aren't paying Brock. I think he's got some other endorsement too. I haven't seen. Here's another defense of Purdy. People the other day on the internet, which is where I know most of my people, were making fun of Brock's outfit, saying he looked like he was the one that I saw that was good was like Brock looks like he saved up all his Kohl's cash. And I showed it to my wife, Alyssa, and she said, well, everyone should stop making fun of him. He looks really nice. And my thought was, she actually, what she said was, do you remember how you dressed when you were 22, 23, 24? And I didn't dress as good as him. My pants did not fit as well as his. They were definitely baggier. And I definitely wasn't wearing like a bomber jacket over a button up. Morale. I can see why I'm getting shown hair product commercials on your YouTube channel. You know, I thought about that today. Like, is there a way? Does anybody work at one of these hair product companies? I use two different hair products, so I could advertise for either. One is a super high end product, and one is like you buy at Target for $7. I combine them. Although today I'm just wearing the $7, $8 Target product. So, you know, I could hit both markets. We could do the high end salons, and we could do, you know, the dudes getting $20 cuts at Supercuts. Or what does a haircut cost at Supercuts? I haven't been to a Supercuts in a long time. Cousin should send his gold Kohl's cash chain to Brock. I did not see that. Here we go. Now, this is the kind of analysis we need. Brock gets paid $3,300 per completion. Dak makes $100,000. Lamar makes $200,000. Most valuable player. I'll tell you what, if that's not analysis, sometimes you can summarize an award race in one sentence. And that's what Scrology just did. Like, I'm a Heisman voter. I voted for Michael Penix. Let me summarize it for you in one sentence. He leads the nation in passing on one of the nation's best teams, who's undefeated and going into the college football playoff, ranked number 2 in the nation. That's the argument. Like, that guy on paper, blind resume, wins the Heisman. Didn't this year. Wasn't even close. Don't get it. I just made a note because Scrology just had a great point. My wardrobe back when I was 23 was bought at Hot Topic, LOL, ripped jeans, Metallica t-shirts. I wish Brock would wear that. All right. I think that's that for this. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. When you subscribe, more people see it. Help this sucker grow. Let's go. Let's go. Let's move. Let's move. Send it to somebody you love. And talk to you soon. Later, everybody.